Hi everyone, welcome to MSCR Makes. I'm Miss Julia and today we're going to be making watercolors with sprinkled salt. For this project you will need some watercolors. Remember, if you don't have watercolors, you can use food coloring, some water, and a small bowl. You'll need some water in a small cup, some salt, a small bowl to put your salt in, a paintbrush, and some paper. You can pause the video here and go gather your supplies. Now that you've had a chance to gather your supplies, I'm going to move some things out of the way. The first thing I'm going to do is put some salt in my bowl. I do not need a lot, maybe a couple tablespoons at most, but 1 tablespoon to a few teaspoons is probably enough. I'm going to put this off to the side where I can reach it. The next thing I'm going to do is show you how to make your watercolors with food coloring if you don't have regular watercolors. So all you'll need is a small bowl. Take a little bit of water and choose the color of food coloring you'd like. I'll make mine blue for this. Put in a few drops and mix it up with your paintbrush. You can use this just like your regular watercolor. I'm going to pull my water in my cup close to me and get out my watercolor. Finally, I'll grab my piece of paper to work on. So for this project, you'll want to use your watercolors however you'd like. So you can make some interesting shapes, whatever sort of shapes your imagination comes up with. What you want to do is get your watercolor kind of wet, but also make sure to rub a lot so that you get a good amount of color on there. Do you see how my watercolor is pretty wet, but also is still a very dark color? So I want a little bit of almost the water to be on my paper so that you can see some of the areas here that look really wet still. That's exactly what I want. And I can also use this watercolor that I made with my food coloring. The next thing I'm going to do while my watercolor is still wet is grab a pinch of salt and sprinkle it on top. Do you see how the watercolor is getting attracted or drawn to the salt? It's like the salt is sucking it up. I'll show you again up close. I'll pick a color, rub, put down my color, and sprinkle my salt on. If you can see the watercolor being drawn to or pooling around the salt, that's how you know your project will turn out well at the end. If you do your color too lightly, so say I use this one, but I don't rub a lot and just do a little, and I sprinkle on my salt, it doesn't draw as much of the water to it. This will look still very nice, but it won't look the same way as this one will when it's dry. I'll show you one that I did earlier that's already dry. Here's my watercolors that I did earlier with some sprinkled salt. I did a few different examples so you can see the different ways that they'll turn out. This one here, I did like this part here. I used a lot of rubbing onto my watercolor to get a nice saturated or dark color, but I still made sure that my watercolor was pretty liquidy so I could see a lot of water when I sprinkled the salt on. And do you see that I brushed off my salt, but can you see? These are the areas where the salt was. It drew the watercolor to it. It looks pretty cool. This area here, I used a lot of watercolor, so I rubbed, but it wasn't very liquidy or wet still when I put the salt on. Do you see how these ones are smaller than these ones are? And this one here at the bottom, I did like this. I didn't use very much color on this one. And you can see where I sprinkled the salt, it doesn't look very much different than a regular watercolor. So you can try using different amounts of watercolor and water and see what has the coolest results. Try mixing different colors too. Use your imagination and make really cool paintings to sprinkle with your salt. I hope you enjoy making this project and this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!